What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Criterion Corner. This is the segment on my channel where I choose films that are either physically in the Criterion collection or streaming on the Criterion channel. And this film I knew virtually nothing about before I watched it, but there's a new category on the Criterion channel that is like new releases or just from theaters or titled something in that vein. And they have a lot of films released in the past 2 or 3 years in that section. And I saw this movie and kind of read the plot description, and it sounded very interesting. And I'm really looking forward to telling you about this movie today. And the film I'm going to be discussing is Joyland. Joyland is directed by Saim Sadiq. As a patriarchal family yearns for the birth of a son to continue their family line, their youngest son secretly joins an erotic dance theater and falls for its transgender starlet. So, as I said, knew very little about this movie, was really looking forward to watching it after reading the plot description, and this is one of the best movies I've seen in years. This movie is emotionally devastating, it's beautiful, it's thought-provoking, it's one of the most poignant cultural commentaries I've ever seen, to the point where I wonder how difficult it was for the director to even put this movie out there, because there's this thoughtful nature to watching the film where you can tell this is a Pakistani film, and you can tell that the director has an immense love for where they are from, but at the same time have a lot of issues with how things go there and with how the culture treats women and how the culture treats queer people and the expectations from men on women in the culture. And it was just such an emotionally moving and beautiful film that I just sat there hours after I watched it and could not stop thinking about each and every little nuance in the movie. And I tell you guys all the time, my favorite films are the ones that really stick with me for long after they're over. And this movie, I just don't see myself forgetting about it anytime soon, and I'm really excited to tell you about it today. So at the beginning of the film, we are introduced to Haider, who lives at home with his entire family, his wife Mumtaz, his brother and sister-in-law, and his father, and then all his brother and sister-in-law's kids. And we see very early on that Haider is not living up to the expectations that his father has set for him. He currently doesn't have a job. His wife Mumtaz is the one who goes to work every day. She works doing, I believe, makeup and hair for weddings in the area, and she seems to really love and be passionate about her job. And we see early on, he seems to very much love his wife, but there's this disconnect between them, and we're not 100% sure early on in the film where that disconnect comes from. And we see him, he's a little bit more to himself, and he's a very quiet-natured person, in contrast to his brother, who is very masculine, patriarchal leader of the family. I go make the money, my wife stays at home and does all the cooking and cleaning and what have you. And the father of the two brothers in the household is very much pushing Haider to get a job and says, you need to go out and do something with your life, and you also need to give us a child. And there's all this expectation placed on him. So he goes out one day and he's talking to one of his friends who says, hey, I have a job for you. And he's like, what is it? And he doesn't really tell him. He makes him show up at this location, and he finds out that the job is at this erotic dance theater in the area that they live in. And he kind of laughs it off at first. He goes on stage and they ask him to do a couple simple dance numbers, and he really fumbles over them and has a hard time and like runs out of there. And his friend says, hey, if you do this, you can make 20,000 rupees a show, and there's 2 shows a month. And he's sitting there thinking about how his family's really struggling with money and how much this could change their lives to kind of bring some more money in. And he reluctantly agrees, and we see him agree after he sees the woman that he's dancing with. And that woman is Biba, who, as the plot description states, is a transgender woman who works at this erotic dance club, but she is not the main star of the show. She gets into a lot of fights with the woman who is the main star of the show. She typically, Biba dances the intermission of the show and is coming up with these dance numbers. And we see very early on that Haider takes an interest in Biba. And the entire film is us kind of jumping with Haider into the storyline of Biba's life and what she is going through and the difficulties that she has struggled with in this society as a trans woman, and also the issues that Mumtaz is going through as Haider's wife and the issues that she's struggling with because she really wants to do the job that she loves to do, and you can see some uncertainty in their marriage. And so it's kind of jumping back and forth between those stories while also seeing how the family operates as a whole, with the patriarch of the family, who is the father of the 2 boys, and unpacking each and every relationship. relationship within this world. So as I said, this is one of my favorite movies that I've watched in quite some time. This movie emotionally moved me and really just kind of tore my insides apart, to be quite honest, when I watched it. It is so beautiful. And for starters, I just want to talk about the performances. I could go through each and every person in this movie and just talk about what remarkable actors that they are. They don't feel like actors, is the reason why it's such an amazing movie. It feels like you're just watching people's lives in a way that feels so personal, and in like a way that you're like really just kind of glimpsing in on the day-to-day life of these people. And that's what I liked so much about this movie. None of it felt like hokey Hollywood schlock or like fake emotionality or ridiculous drama thrown in to just kind of push and pull at you as a viewer. It felt like people living their lives, and that's what made it so impactful. And these performances, there were so many emotionally gripping moments that I just found myself totally locked to the screen and just couldn't wait to see what was going to happen next. The cinematography in this movie is absolutely exceptional. There were some frames in this movie that just stuck out in my mind immediately. You can tell the amount of delicacy that the cinematographer had working with the director, placing the camera in just the perfect right area in order to showcase the level of emotion that these characters are. The camera was often placed in a frame that the visuals were showing you where the relationship between the characters were based on where they were set in the frame, which I'm always super impressed when you can use the visuals to help make the emotions more intense in the film. And I was really just kind of blown away. I didn't expect this to have some of my favorite cinematography that I've seen in quite some time. And as I said at the beginning of the review, what makes this movie so special is its commentary. And obviously, I am not from this area. I'm not a Pakistani person. And so I don't know each and every nuance of the culture. I'm not 100% understanding, but what I can see is a person who has lived in this culture and has a lot to critique about it, but also is able to show the love that they have for the place while also being able to pick it apart a little bit. And what it really reminded me of was Alfonso Cuarón's Roma, and how that movie is such a love letter to Mexico while also picking apart the immense amount of issues that Mexico has. And I think no matter who you are as a person, especially someone like me coming from the United States of America, there are things that I love about living in this country, and there are a ton of things that I hate about living in this country. And I think when you've lived somewhere long enough, you get to a point where you can really easily pick those things apart. But what I think is so interesting about this director, and I read in some articles after the movie was over, this movie was initially banned when he released it, and they were not going to show it in Pakistan because of the level of things that it was critiquing. And it's very brave to release a movie like this because it covers a wide array of issues, the main one being the way women are treated in this culture. And that's so much through Mumtaz's character and how she's forced to quit her job. She's in this marriage that you can tell very early on she's very uncertain to, and there's more about their marriage that plays out on throughout the film, and I don't want to give too much away. But the societal implications on women in this culture and how they are essentially just viewed as objects to give birth to babies and to cook and clean. And it's very upsetting, and it's very hard to watch in moments because you see Mumtaz's character, who's this very lively, wonderful, happy person that just wants to live this life doing makeup for these weddings, and she genuinely is good at her job and she loves her job. And because of all these pressures and implications that men put on her, she's not able to continue to do that, and it's heartbreaking. And then the disconnect in her relationship and the yearning for physical touch and intimacy, but because she's in this marriage that there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of that, she's not able to experience it. And the shame that she feels when she yearns for sexual connection or touch, and it's such a heartbreaking movie that does a phenomenal job showcasing those things. And then you have Biba's character, who is a transgender woman who in this culture is constantly just called a man everywhere that she goes, and people say horrible things about her, and they treat her differently, but she's such a strong-willed character that she doesn't put up with any of it, and she really just kind of gives it back to people and stands her ground in a way that I was really impressed with. Because you think in the United States, transgender people are constantly fighting for their right to exist, and there's more acceptance here surrounding the queer community despite the troubles. But I think about a place like that, it's got to be even harder and even more difficult. And so seeing that performance, and then having our lead character Haider be the one who's kind of viewing these women, because he plays a part in the movie, and he's not necessarily the greatest character. You can empathize for him in moments, but he also makes some really poor decisions. But I think more than anything, he is a vehicle to watch these two women who are living two very different lives, that are also both experiencing a ton of issues just surviving. And I loved that about this movie. And there's also like religious implications here, and how religion plays a big part in society. And then obviously this idea of the importance of childbirth, where these people are essentially living in poverty, but they're working so hard to bring another child into the household that they can barely afford to keep afloat as it is. And I could just go on for probably an hour pulling each and every little nuance about this movie and the critique on the culture. And it's just so brilliant that there is that much, but the director doesn't seem to skip over any of it. It's like he takes so much time on each and every little thing that it all sticks with you by the time the movie is over. And as I said, it's an immense cultural critique, but there's also a lot of love here as well. You see a wedding that they go to, you see this amusement park that they constantly visit, moments of joy they share at meals, different elements of the culture that are there, that you can tell there is a love, but there's also this like, what could make it better? Let's change all of these things that could make lives so much easier. And if there was so much less pressure on people, that it could be a happier place to live. And it's just a movie that I have not stopped thinking about since I watched it, and it is a movie that I will recommend to virtually everyone. This movie impacted me so much. It is so beautiful. I commend this director. I want to watch everything this director has made, because it was just an absolutely amazing piece of film. And if you have the Criterion channel, I would 100% go watch this right away. If you don't, just go rent it. It is totally worth the money. So have you seen Joyland? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was absolutely remarkable. It's one of my favorite movies I've watched in quite some time, and I cannot wait to watch it again. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.